Whether we realize it or not, Homo sapiens, that's ASR, just one of more than a dozen species that belong to the same remarkable genus. Homo, a Latin word that simply means man. Our story begins roughly 2.8 million years ago when the first known members of this lineage emerged. That estimate comes from a fossil known as LD 352-1, the fragment of a left jawbone belonging to an ancient adult. Though incomplete, it has provided one of the earliest verified glimpses into our kind, possibly an ancestor of Homo habilis or Homo rudolphus. From that moment onward, human evolution followed a general trend. With each new species, our ancestors became less primitive, more refined, and increasingly skilled at using tools. Over millions of years, technology and intelligence evolved, hand in hand, shaping what would eventually become modern humanity. But in 2015, everything we thought we knew about that smooth progression was shaken. Deep beneath the rugged landscape of South Africa, researchers uncovered something that seemed impossible, a new species of human that looked as though it had been plucked straight out of the distant past. Despite living relatively recently, this mysterious being possessed a blend of primitive traits and modern features that didn't make sense in the evolutionary timeline. It was unlike anything scientists had seen before. And so, they gave it a name, Homo naledi, the Starman, named after the rising star cave system where it was found. What followed would challenge our understanding of what it means to be human, and force scientists to rethink how and when our species truly came to be. The story of Homo naledi begins in one of the most perilous and mysterious places on Earth, the Rising Star Cave in South Africa. Hidden beneath layers of rock and shadow, this sprawling underground labyrinth would prove to be both a treasure trove and an enigma. Every single fossil we know of from this species, every bone, every fragment comes from this one location. It's as if Homo naledi existed only within the confines of that cave, their entire legacy sealed in darkness for hundreds of thousands of years. Exploring it was no easy task. The passages were so tight and the descents so steep that only a handful of exceptionally slender scientists could make it through. It took years of effort and countless hours of crawling through rock to reach the chambers where the remains rested. But what awaited them there was beyond anyone's expectations. Instead of a few scattered fossils or a single incomplete skeleton, researchers uncovered over 15 individual bodies, men, women, and children alike, all remarkably well preserved. More than 1,500 bones were collected, enough to piece together a vivid portrait of this lost species. Radiometric dating placed them between 335,000 and 236,000 years old, shockingly young in evolutionary terms. Living at the same time our own species, Homo sapiens, was first beginning to appear. And yet, their anatomy told a very different story. Their bodies did not match their age. They looked far older, almost as if a relic from an ancient world had somehow survived into modern times. Their bones revealed a confusing blend of features, some resembling the earliest humans, others strikingly similar to ours. Scientists found themselves staring at a paradox of species too modern to be primitive, and too primitive to be modern. When scientists began to study the bones of Homo naledi, they quickly realized this was no ordinary human species. Their anatomy was a fascinating puzzle, part ancient, part astonishingly modern. To begin with, they were exceptionally small. Both males and females stood at an average height of just 4 feet 9 inches, with light, slender frames rarely exceeding 90 pounds. In the grand story of humanity, they ranked among the smallest of us all, second only to Homo floresiensis, the so-called hobbit species from Indonesia. Yet while Homo floresiensis' tiny size could be explained by island dwarfism, Homo naledi lived on the African mainland, making their miniature stature even more intriguing. But it wasn't their height that most puzzled scientists, it was their hands. Their wrists and thumbs were strikingly advanced, resembling those of Neanderthals and modern humans, strong and capable of precise movements. Yet their fingers told a different story. Long, curved, and built for gripping, they were perfect for climbing trees. It was as if two eras of evolution had been fused into one body. Their shoulders, ribcage, and pelvis also bore the marks of a much older lineage, suggesting that despite their modern touches, Homo naledi still spent a great deal of time off the ground, perhaps sleeping or seeking refuge in trees to avoid predators. And yet, when they came down to earth, they walked upright, fully bipedal, just like us. Their legs were strong, their knees well-formed, and their hips built for endurance, capable of carrying them long distances across rugged terrain. This strange combination of traits, street climbers who also strode confidently across the land, that left anthropologists astonished. They weren't primitive throwbacks. They were something else entirely, a hybrid of the ancient and the modern, a species seemingly caught between two worlds. If Homo naledi skeletons were puzzling, their teeth only deepened the mystery. At first glance, they were unusually small, dainty, even, but built from thick enamel, a trait typical of much older human ancestors. This single detail went against the evolutionary trend, since over time most human species had developed thinner enamel. Their molars also carried a primitive shape, designed for endurance more than delicacy. Together, these traits suggested a diet that was far from gentle. When researchers examined the wear patterns under microscopes, they found scratches and grooves packed with tiny bits of grit. It seemed that Homo naledi ate directly from the ground roots, tubers, and whatever could be dug up from the dusty soil of ancient South Africa. Their meals were simple, rugged, and full of dirt. It was a diet that told the story of survival in a harsh, changing world. Africa at the time was shifting from dense forests to open savannas, forcing creatures like Homo naledi to adapt to scarcity. They may have stayed in one area until resources ran low, then moved on in search of more food, their small size and climbing skills helping them navigate rocky cliffs and scattered trees along the way. What made things even more confounding was how their teeth formed. Though shaped differently from ours, they grew and developed in a remarkably human way, and other subtle link between them and us. It was as though Homo naledi stood on a biological fault line, bridging to epochs of evolution. They weren't quite ancient, yet not fully modern either. Everything about them, their bones, their hands, even their diet seemed to whisper that they belonged to a world out of place and out of time. For all the physical mysteries surrounding Homo naledi, none were as captivating or as perplexing as their brains. Their skulls revealed a mind housed within a surprisingly small space, averaging between 465 and 610 cubic centimeters, barely half the size of a modern human brain, and closer to that of a newborn child. By all appearances, this tiny brain should have belonged to a simple, primitive creature. Yet, when scientists studied the interior shape of their skulls, they found something extraordinary. Despite the smaller size, the brain's structure was remarkably modern. The frontal lobe, the area associated with planning and complex thought, was the occipital and temporal lobes showed signs of sophisticated sensory and cognitive functions, features once thought exclusive to much larger-brained humans. This raised an unsettling question. Could Homo naledi have been intelligent? Could a small brain still harbor a complex mind? The answer, though uncertain, may be yes. The structure of their brain hinted at social behavior, communication, and perhaps even rudimentary language. Yet no stone tools, weapons, or other signs of technology have ever been found alongside their remains. Their home, the rising star cave, contained thousands of bones, but not a single artifact to suggest tool use. It was a contradiction that defied easy explanation. A species with the brain of a genius, trapped in the skull of a child. Some scientists believe the cave itself holds the greatest clue. The chamber where Homo naledi's remains were discovered lies deep within the earth, accessible only through steep shafts and narrow passages, barely wide enough for a human body. It's so difficult to reach that even modern explorers require specialized training and equipment to enter. The fact that so many Homo naledi individuals were found in such an unreachable place led researchers to one astonishing theory. Perhaps they placed their dead there intentionally. If true, this would make Homo naledi the earliest known species to bury their dead hundreds of thousands of years before Homo sapiens developed the practice. It would mean that even with their small brains, they possessed an awareness of death, of self, and perhaps of something beyond. If that's the case, then Homo naledi wasn't just another branch on the human tree. They were proof that intelligence, empathy, and mystery ran deeper in our family than we ever imagined. As scientists tried to piece together Homo naledi's story, they found themselves facing more questions than answers. Who exactly were these people of the rising star? Where did they come from, and how did they fit into the tangled family tree of humankind? After years of study, 4 main theories emerged, each as puzzling as the fossils themselves. The first theory suggests that Homo naledi branched off from early human ancestors far earlier than we once believed, perhaps as early as the Pliocene epoch, nearly a million years before they appeared in the fossil record. If true, they would be a living relic of a much older lineage that somehow persisted while other species evolved around them. The second idea paints an even stranger picture, that Homo naledi could be the product of interbreeding between early humans and an older group of ape-like ancestors known as Australopithecines. This would make them a hybrid species, a genetic echo of 2 worlds merging. The third and fourth hypotheses link Homo naledi to other well-known branches of humanity. Some scientists argue they were close relatives or sister species to Homo erectus, one of the earliest true explorers of the human world. Others suggest a connection to Homo heidelbergensis, the likely ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. In either case, their skeletal features show surprising similarities, especially in the structure of their skulls. Yet no matter which lineage they seem to fit into, Homo naledi still refuses to be neatly categorized. Every new analysis deepens the mystery, instead of solving it. What is clear, however, is that their existence was short-lived. Fossil evidence shows that Homo naledi occupied South Africa for roughly 100,000 years, a brief flicker in the timeline of human evolution. Life for them was harsh. Their bones reveal signs of disease, malnutrition, and developmental stress, the hallmarks of a species constantly battling its environment. The region they lived in suffered from unpredictable climates, with scorching summers and freezing winters that would have been brutal for such small-bodied humans. Even today, the same area is known for high rates of illness due to environmental pressures, proof that survival there has never been easy. Predators, too, were a constant threat. Lions, leopards, and hyenas roamed the plains, and a creature as small as Homo naledi would have made an easy target. Yet strangely, few large animal fossils were found near their cave. Some believe this isolation offered them brief protection, while others think it hints at a harsher truth that the barren, unforgiving terrain eventually became their undoing. As climates shifted and resources vanished, Homo naledi may have simply run out of places to go. Their story ended quietly, their final traces sealed within the depths of the rising star cave. And so, what began as a discovery of bones became a mirror reflecting back on us. Homo naledi forces us to confront what it truly means to be human, not just in form, but in spirit. They were small, fragile, and fleeting, yet their mystery endures. Somewhere in those dark caves of South Africa, in the silent bones of the Starman, lies a reminder that our story is far older and far more complicated than we ever imagined. In the end, Homo naledi remains one of the greatest enigmas in the story of our evolution, a ghostly branch on the human family tree that shouldn't exist, yet undeniably did. Their discovery shattered the illusion of a simple, straight path from primitive ape to modern human. Instead, it revealed a far more intricate design, one shaped by trial, adaptation, and chance. They were creatures caught between two worlds, ancient in bone, yet modern in mind, small in body, yet vast in mystery. Each fragment of their remains speaks in whispers of survival, of curiosity, and perhaps even of meaning. Were they capable of understanding death? Did they mourn their fallen and place them in the depths of that cave to rest? Or were their bones carried there by the earth itself, swallowed by time? We may never know for certain. But their presence challenges the deepest assumptions we hold about what it means to be human. They remind us that intelligence isn't measured by the size of a skull, nor humanity by the tools we leave behind, but by the traces of thought and connection we carve into the world. As scientists continue to study their remains, Homo naledi stands as both a question and a mirror. A question of how such beings could exist so late in history, and a mirror reflecting the truth that we, too, are temporary, one species among many, defined as much by what we don't know as by what we do. Beneath the surface of the rising star cave, in the silence where they once lay, rests not just a forgotten species, but a reminder that the story of humanity is still being written, and perhaps, somewhere in the dark, we are still uncovering who we truly are.